Welcome back into the Chiefs Training Camp Report, a part of the Arrowhead Pride Podcast Network. I am Steven Serda. It's Friday, July 21st. It is Veteran Report Day, so we should see some veterans arriving in St. Joseph, Missouri later this afternoon. But today was kind of a lighter practice for the Kansas City Chiefs. Everything kind of ended early, had some quick press conferences, and they're getting ready for those veterans. Tomorrow is an off day. So we will see the veterans take the field on Sunday afternoon in St. Joe for their first full team practice of the 2023 season. So let me welcome in the leader of Arrowhead Pride, Pete Sweeney. Sween, it's Barbenheimer weekend. Are we doing a double feature on Saturday since there's no Chiefs practice?
I am going to utilize the day off. We decided to get tickets to Oppenheimer, so we're going to do half of it and maybe catch Barbie at some point when there's maybe another training camp off day. So I fully expect that while I'm in this 3-hour movie, there's going to be a lot of news about Chris Jones that I'm not going to be able to get to until after we get out of the film. But yeah, no, it's an exciting weekend, I know, in Hollywood, and it'll be exciting for the Kansas City Chiefs when we got our first full team practice on Sunday morning.
Yeah, that's been the obviously we talk about it a little bit here on the Arrowhead Pride Podcast Network, but I am a movie nerd, and I really wanted to go see Oppenheimer last night, but it's 3 hours long, and I was like, I know as soon as I sit down, the Chiefs are going to sign an extension with Chris Jones, and it's going to ruin the movie for me. So I'm totally expecting that to happen this season when I try to go see Barbie and Oppenheimer this weekend, and we'll just have to see. That's part of the job. That's the way things work. But getting back to Kansas City Chiefs training camp, it was a light practice on Friday, which isn't unusual for Andy Reid training camps, but kind of fill us in on what we saw on the field from practice today.
Yeah, I think the significant takeaway was that Isaiah Pacheco was out here again, right? We didn't see Patrick Mahomes or Blaine Gabbert, which is typical every year. On this particular day, the first Friday, Andy Reid usually gives them off. Mike Edwards had been up here. Again, we talked about him yesterday. He's new to the team, didn't really get to participate in OTAs as he dealt with a hamstring issue. So he got the day off as well. And so there were some younger players that got opportunities. We mentioned the two top quarterbacks were not working. So it was up to Shane Buechele and Chris Oladokun to run the practice. And you did see Rashee Rice had a drop early, but then seemed to come in his own. I would say that the play of the day happened with a deep pass from Shane Buechele down the seam to Rice, who was able to complete the pass. I should say, check it. It was Cornell Powell who made the deep catch. And it was nice to see Cornell Powell bring it in. Remember a draft pick from a few years ago from Shane Buechele. The only problem was that what I would say is a practice squad hopeful, number 47, Anthony Cook, was able to rip it out as they fell to the ground, and that got the biggest rise of practice from the defensive side. Anthony Cook was able to add a pass breakup later on in the practice. You had Buechele and Oladokun taking most of the reps. Buechele continued to get more reps than Oladokun, but in red zone 7-on-7, Oladokun was able to rip off 3 straight touchdowns. So this is a guy who's not really getting a lot of reps, probably playing right now in training camp to make the Chiefs maybe make him a developmental practice squad quarterback. So I thought he had a good day when he had to. When you're the 4th quarterback in a camp, you're not going to get a lot of repetitions. And so, again, good to see the rookie draft picks and good to see, I think, these players that are trying to make what would be, I call it the 69-man roster when you had those 16 practice squad spots, that they're stepping up and making plays as well.
And you kind of called this earlier in the week, but we knew Patrick Mahomes probably going to be off today. It's not uncommon for Andy Reid, especially with veterans reporting, and the few veterans that are already there just kind of got Friday off because Friday is kind of a quieter, easier practice. And they ended an hour earlier than they were supposed to. So it is a pretty light day for the Kansas City Chiefs as they're gearing up for the full team practices that are going to get much tougher here in the coming weeks.
Yeah, and this is, again, par for the course. Nothing to worry about here. Andy Reid usually gives the veterans off, and Patrick Mahomes doesn't necessarily need the additional work at this point in his 2-time MVP, 2-time Super Bowl championship career. And now we turn our attention to Veteran Report Day. And I think the major story here on camp is Chris Jones going to be here? If he is, when is he going to be here? Would he take a few days and try to prove a point and continuing to say that he wants a new contract? Will he get a new contract sometime today or tomorrow? If I'm guessing right now, I think that Chris Jones maybe takes a few days if there's no deal agreed to, but he's not going to take too many because in the new CBA, you get these fines, $50,000 a day where you're not here that you can't really pay back. It used to be a thing where maybe you could pay back the fines when you come to an agreement. The new CBA really fines these players and is very stringent and strict. And so I think maybe he misses a few days, but eventually he does report. The report day is a little bit different for the Kansas City Chiefs this year. They can report any time on Friday and really just have to be here for the run test Saturday morning. So word is that even some players will be trickling in on Saturday morning, where maybe in previous years you saw every player report on what would be that one given day at a certain time.
Yeah, I fully expect the Chiefs to come to an agreement with Chris Jones here in the next few days. Hopefully it's not this weekend, so it doesn't mess up my double feature opportunity. But I'm kind of with you, Pete. I think, and we've seen this from Jones before, where maybe he misses a couple of days but comes in early, because I think even while we're all optimistic that this deal is going to get done, and I believe that it is going to get done. I think that they are having conversations and they are moving in the right direction. It just winds up being a matter of some money here and there, and how they want to put things into the contract. But I'm fairly confident that Chris Jones is going to be there, because I think he understands how important these practices are, and we've seen it from him before. Like, he is that kind of player. He is that kind of has that kind of important role on the team, even in training camp.
Well, if you go to even to the ESPY speech, and of course this is a showcase of the Chiefs. They won the best team, and I mean, you can just tell he wants to be in Kansas City. This is somebody who tweeted he wants to be a Chief for life. I do believe that. You know, sometimes toward the end of careers, it can get a little dicey in that sense. Like, you know, years from now, who knows, right? We know that at one point, Jamal Charles wore a Broncos uniform and Derek Johnson wore a Raiders uniform. We're not talking about the end of his career, but the bulk of his career with the Kansas City Chiefs. So I think there's full desire for Jones to be here, and I think the Chiefs want him to be here, and it's just a matter of hashing this out. And I think it helps that they have that baseline from Quinnen Williams and the New York Jets, and that's in. I think if there was a worry that I had, was that the Jets and Williams were going to take so long that Jones and the Chiefs would have to just wait for that. But that's in the can, and I think now that they have that, they can get to work.
And the Quinnen Williams contract is actually something Chiefs fans should celebrate, because as soon as that domino fell, it was like, okay, now we can get it done. And I do full-heartedly believe that was the biggest holdup for Chris Jones, because at this stage of his career, how important he is to the defense. Like, he deserves to be right next to Aaron Donald when it comes to highest paid defensive tackles in the NFL. So I'm fully confident that the Chiefs will get a deal done with Chris Jones. But this afternoon on Friday, is veterans start to show up, and you know, everybody from the local media is out there kind of seeing who's in attendance. But as you mentioned, Pete, they can kind of show up whenever on Friday. So there's no guarantee we're actually going to spot Chris Jones on Friday, but it doesn't necessarily mean that he might not show up.
Right. I think it might be a thing where one of the NFL newsbreakers that you see that get fed this stuff all the time, that from the national standpoint, the Adam Schefter's, the Interrap report, one of those guys will eventually have an update that says, you know, Chris Jones has arrived on campus, and you know, we expect that. I'm not sure if that'll be today. I'm not sure that'll be tomorrow. But you know, if I'm trying to put it, when do I believe he'll be here by day? I gotta think he's on campus by the time Wednesday rolls around. Like, you can only take so many $50,000 fines and feel okay about it. And like, maybe he doesn't even practice, right? We saw a couple of years back with Jalen Ramsey in Jacksonville. He had that mysterious back injury. You know, sometimes when you are trying to look for a new contract, and it was in Ramsey's case a new team, that back starts to, Steve, you know, flare up a little bit. If you want to say that, and you don't take the field until you have that contract extension. And once you get that payday, that signing bonus, suddenly that back feels a lot better. So I do think we'll spot Chris Jones on Wednesday. I'm a little unsure about when he does practice, but I do think by the time you get out of training camp, and I've said this, I think it's going to be the next two deals for the Kansas City Chiefs. I think they get Chris Jones done, use some of that money against the cap to go and get Carlos Dunlap back in here, and that'll be your team. That'll be your team that has to go and try to repeat as Super Bowl champions for the first time since the early 2000s.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, with this finding system for veteran players not reporting and trying to hold out, we see a lot of hold-ins now. So
Yes, a
I
holding.
I I, I
That's the
think
new term.
yeah, like I think it's very likely that we could see Chris Jones show up on Friday, report he's there on Sunday, but maybe he's holding in and not practicing until they get a deal done. That's a pretty common thing now with the way that they're finding these veteran players. But we'll see. We'll have all the news and updates for you at arrowheadpride.com. So make sure you're locked in there. Make sure you follow Pete on Twitter at PG Sween. It's got everything you need to know from the ground in St. Joseph, Missouri. And as always, please make sure you subscribe, rate, and review everything that we are doing here on the Arrowhead Pride Podcast Network. Have all the updates for you later on this afternoon as veterans start to report. They are off tomorrow. We're taking it off. Barbenheimer double feature. Cannot wait, Sween. And then we will be back on the grind on Sunday afternoon as the Chiefs open up their full team practice sessions in St. Joseph, Missouri. But we will talk to you guys on Sunday. Pete?
Yep, don't eat too much popcorn, Steve.